sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, do you have the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, that 8 bottles of champagne are recorded as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
It is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I'm not quite sure that I'm interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem rather lax. Really, if the lower orders can't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ernest, how are you? I bring you to town.
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
It is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
What are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
Immensely, you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your country, is it not?
Oh, yes, Shropshire. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
No, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all right, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta can't quite approve of your being here.
And why not?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I love Gwendolyn. Why, I had come up to town expressly to propose to her.
You said you came up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic in a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy, why the divorce courts were especially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
No, there's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're made especially for Lady Bracknell.
But you've been eating them all this time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Well, you need not eat as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever shall be.
Why on earth would you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it's right.
That's nonsense.
It isn't. It's a great truth that accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I can allow you to marry her, you're going to have to clear up this whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? Algy, I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily. I don't know what on earth you're talking about.
Bring me the cigarette case that Mr. Worthing left in my smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you'd told me. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I'd very nearly been offering a large reward.
I wish you would offer one. I'm more than usually hard up.
Well, there's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found, is there?
That is very mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no difference, for now that I look at the inscription inside, the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you've no right whatsoever to read the interior of a private cigarette case. It's very ungentlemanly.
It is absurd to make a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends upon what one shouldn't read.
I have no doubt about that, and I didn't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk about in private. I just want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case was the present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too, lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Archie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear Algie, some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that's a matter an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt on earth should be exactly like your aunt. How perfectly absurd. I just want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but why does she call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to dear Uncle Jack. Now, there is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, whatever her size may be, would call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack, it's Earnest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
But you always told me it was Earnest. I've introduced you to everyone as Earnest. You answer to the name of Earnest. You look as if your name was Earnest. You're the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Earnest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as a proof that your name is Ernest, in case you ever try to deny it to me or to Gwendolyn or anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that doesn't account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her Uncle Jack. Much better have the whole thing out at once.
My dear Algie, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It leaves a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists always do. Now, go on, do the whole thing. I might just mention that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
A Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I will share with you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation. Pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable about it at all. Why, in fact, the thing is perfectly ordinary. You see, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will the guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Miss Cardew, who addresses me as her uncle out of motives of respect which you could not possibly understand, lives in my place in the country under the guardianship of her governess, Miss Prism.
Where is this place in the country, by the way?
That is no business of yours. You are not going to be invited. I can tell you quite candidly the place is not in Shropshire.
Oh, I suspected that, my dear boy. I've been Bunburying all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on, why are you Ernest in town, Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, I really don't know whether you'll be able to understand my true motives. You're hardly serious enough. You see, when one is placed in the position of a guardian, one is forced to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And, as a high moral tone is hardly conducive to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town whenever I like, I have invented a younger brother by the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear fellow, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very difficult if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
I have no doubt about that.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. Leave it to those that haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was right in calling you a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
A Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may come up to town whenever you like. I have invented an invaluable invalid called Bunbury, in order that I might go down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I have already been engaged with Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
I really think you'd much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the slightest intention of doing anything of the kind. In the first place, I dine with her on Monday night, and once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm treated as a member of the family and sent down with either no women or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom she shall place me next to. She shall place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. It is not very pleasant. In fact, it is not even decent. That thing is extraordinarily on the uprise. The number of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It's like simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know your secret and confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
But I'm not a Bunburyist at all. Why, if Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. But Cecily's a bit too much interested in him. It's rather a bore. So in any case, I'm going to kill my brother, and I strongly advise you to do the same with that invalid friend of yours with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to get rid of Bunbury, and if you ever get married, which I find highly problematic, you will be glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Oh, that is nonsense. Why, if I married Gwendolen, then she is the only girl I ever saw in my life who I would want to marry. I certainly wouldn't want to know Bunbury.
But then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, young fellow, is the theory which the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be so cynical, Algy. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It is not easy to be anything nowadays. There's so much beastly competition about. Ah, there must be Aunt Augusta. Only creditors and relatives ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes, in order that you might have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, might I dine with you at Willis's tonight?
I suppose if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments. And I intend to develop in many directions. I'm sorry for a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harvey. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. Now, I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolen, won't you sit here? Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There are no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm dreadfully sorry about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I heard her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all, Aunt Augusta.
I hope not, Algernon. It will put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great bore and need hardly mention a great disappointment to me, but the truth is I have just received a telegram that says my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him,
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury's a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to a poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. But I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury, from me, to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I depend on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll talk to Bunbury and Augusta, and I think I can promise he'll be all right by Saturday. But the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen, and if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn up, if you'll be so kind as to step into the next room for a moment.
Oh, thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful, after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they are improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed, I believe, is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else, Miss Fairfax.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
In fact, I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, Gwendolen, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you are aware, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen?
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, but supposing it wasn't, supposing it was something else, you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me then.
Oh, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Really, darling. To be quite frank, I've never much cared about the name of Earnest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, darling, I think there's some other much nicer names out there. I think, Jack, for instance. A perfectly marvelous name.
Jack. No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, have been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There's no time to lose.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Yes, of course. Why, I love you, and you have led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said about marriage at all. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And in order to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have very little experience with how to propose.
Oh, my own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Earnest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from his semi-recumbent posture. It is most ridiculous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter she could be allowed to arrange for herself. Now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
But, Mamma...
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage.
Yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I first handing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list that the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I do smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm glad to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes, and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investment?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's life and those exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
Well, I do have a country house, of course, with about 1,500 acres attached, I think. Although it didn't depend on that for any real income. I think the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I do own a house in Belgrave Square, although it is let by the year to Lady Wasson. I can get it back whenever I like, though, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
She goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could be easily altered.
You mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. You see, I'm a liberal unionist.
Ah, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evenings at any rate. Now, to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents, Lady Bracknell.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, Lady Bracknell, I said that I had lost my parents. It would really be near to the truth to say that my parents lost me. You see, I don't really know who I am by birth. I was, well, found.
Found?
Yes, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of very kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he had a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, a somewhat large black handbag with handles attached to it. A perfectly ordinary handbag.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew find this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you've just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had hands or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As to the particular locality in which the handbag was found, cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably indeed been used for such a purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do then, Lady Bracknell? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to assure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible. And to make a definite effort to produce one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I can possibly do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. Really, I have it in my room at home. I really think that should be enough to satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? How can it affect me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. Oh, for heaven's sake, stop playing that ghastly tune, Algy. How idiotic you are.
Did it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I notice the way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it is very ill-natured of her.
No, Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she's concerned, we're engaged. Some mother that's perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is, but I'm quite sure anybody. In any case, she's a monster without being a myth, which is perfectly unfair. And I'm sorry, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't talk of your own aunt in this way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest idea of how to live or the slightest instinct of when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Oh, I'm not going to argue with you about it. You always want to argue about things.
That is what things are originally made for.
Good heavens, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. Say, you don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in, say, 150 years, do you not?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does, that's his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm perfectly sick to death of cleverness. Why, everyone is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
Oh, we have.
How extremely interesting. I should like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Oh, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, have you told Gwendolyn the truth about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't exactly the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl like Gwendolyn. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to relate to a woman.
The only way to relate to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
But what about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
I shall have got rid of him by the end of the week. I'll say he got carried off in Paris by some illness, so say apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You would much better say a severe chill.
You're quite sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that sort?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest to be carried off quite suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
Yes, but I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Earnest. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, I wouldn't worry about that. Cecily's not a silly romantic girl. Why, she has a capital appetite. She goes on long walks and pays no attention whatsoever to her studies.
I should rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
Does Gwendolyn know that you have an excessively pretty ward who is just 18?
One doesn't exactly blurt these things out to people. I am quite sure that Gwendolyn and Cecily are going to become extremely great friends. Why, I'll bet you anything you like that a half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only call each other that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. But if you want to get a good table at Wilde's tonight, you really must go and dress. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it's always nearly 7.
I'm hungry.
I never knew when you weren't.
What shall we do after we dine? Go to a theatre?
Oh, no, I hate listening.
Then let us go to a club.
Oh, no, I loathe talking.
Well, we might trot round to the Empire at 10.
Oh, no, I can't stand looking at things. It's so silly.
What shall we do?
Nothing.
It is awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work, but there's no definite object of any kind involved.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude toward life. You're not quite old enough to do that. Ernest, we may never be married. From the look on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Darling.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I shall communicate with you daily.
Oh, my own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I have already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me escort you to your carriage, will you not?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir. A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I don't think I shall be back till Monday. You can put on my dress clothes, the smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow shall be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Oh, there's a sensible, intellectual young girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What are you laughing about?
Oh, I'm just a little anxious for poor Bunbury, that's all.
You'd better be careful, or your friend Bunbury is going to get you into a serious scrape one of these days.
I love scrapes, but the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that's nonsense, Algy. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German when he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of the place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure that I would desire to replace him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Emery, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. Indeed, I believe memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I do hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I know it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I should hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. The metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Yes. He usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother appears to be. But I shall not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
Pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the Troupe you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy! Horrid geography! Horrid...
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Earnest Worthing, before the Albany, Dublin. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden, and he said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Tell Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. Oh, he does.
Ah, you are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You must be under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I think I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
Well, if you are not, then you've certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I do hope you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention it, I have been very bad in my own small way.
Well, I don't think you should be so very proud of that. I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand why you should be here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up on the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, of course, I know how important it is not to keep a business engagement, if one must retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you'd better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak with you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
Oh, I certainly won't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think he will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd rather die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, Cecily, the accounts I've heard of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Then would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
Well, it is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should remember that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have an appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
And there's Sonia.
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Oh, why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw in my life.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
Then they are a snare that every sensible man should like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I should like to catch a sensible man. Should know what to talk with him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, a womanthrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up till the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And often, I'm told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. Where is
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing.
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
Indeed, I have returned sooner than I expected. I trust you're well, Dr. Chasuble.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I hope this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful deaths and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Brother Earnest? Dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, you have my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
My poor brother Earnest, he had his faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad blow indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died in Paris, in fact. I received a telegram last night from the manager at the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
Man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Mr. Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to draughts. The interment take place here.
No, in fact, he expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
Paris. I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing. I preached at harvest festivals, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral, as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop, who was present, was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Oh, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think. You do know how to christen, all right? I mean, you're always continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
And is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child I seek christening, no. Though I'm very fond of children. But, no, it's actually for myself. This afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any great doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to. In any case, I don't know if the thing would trouble you at all, or I'm too old.
Oh, not at all. The sprinkling and indeed immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
Oh, well, you need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed, I think, advisable. Our weather is so changeable. What hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I was thinking I might trot around about 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that hour. A case of twins which occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages of your own estate. And poor Jenkins the carter, a most hard-working man.
I don't know if I'd like to be christened along with other babies. It'd be so childish. How about if I come round at 5:30?
I should do admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to be a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack, I'm so glad to see you back. Well, what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother! Your brother Ernest, who arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that! However badly he may behave to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Well, these are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. It seems to be perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John, I have come up from town expressly to say that I am very sorry for all the trouble I have given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to resent your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here perfectly disgraceful, and he knows quite well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Why, Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. He goes to visit so often. Surely there must be much good in one who's kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been telling you about Mr. Bunbury, has he?
He's been telling me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
But I won't have him talking to you about Bunbury or anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit all the faults were on my side. However, I must say that I think Brother John's coldness to be peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I shall never forgive you.
Never?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I will do it.
It is pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Yes, Miss Prism, my little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
Algy, you young scoundrel! You must get out of here at once! I don't allow any Bunbury in here!
I have put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to your own, sir. I suppose that's all right?
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage!
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a very large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week this time.
Marianne, order the dog cart up at once. Mr. Earnest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a dreadful liar you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I have no doubt about that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
I will not have you talking called you like that, I don't approve.
Oh, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly childish for you to be in deep mourning for a man who's actually staying with you in your house for a whole week as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You're not staying with me in my house as a guest for a week or anything else. In fact, you've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly shan't leave you so long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. And you'd think it most unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long about it. I never saw anyone take so long to dress with such little result.
Well, that is better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence here in my garden utterly absurd. However, you've got to catch the 4:05 train, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This wandering, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her again and make plans for another bumpering. Oh, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's going to send the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then we've got to part?
I'm afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Oh, thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
You can wait, Marianne, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it's simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I've reached absolute perfection. You can go on, I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is going to dictate, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your incomparable and wonderful beauty, I have dared to love you. Wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
And tell it to come around next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying until next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me.
You silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who is very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. But when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I finally accepted you under that dear old tree over there. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name. And here's the little bangle, the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I get this for you, Cecily? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given you for leading such a bad life. Oh, and here is extra box in which I keep all your dear letters.
But sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
Oh, you hardly need remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, sometimes oftener.
Well, do let me read them, Cecily.
No, I couldn't possibly. They'd make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote to me after I'd broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can read the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all, Cecily. I am very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
Dear Ernest, it hardly would have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. Besides, I forgave you before the week was out.
Oh, darling, you're a perfect angel.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, doesn't it?
Yes, dear, with little help from others. You'll never break off our engagement again, will you?
Oh, I don't think I can break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there's the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. There's something about that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
You don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
Well, I don't like the name of Algernon.
But dear, sweet, lovely Cecily, I don't see how you can possibly object to the name of Algernon. It is not at all a bad name. In fact, it is rather an aristocratic name. Half the chaps that get into bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name were Algy, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Now, Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in all the practices of the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He's never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, most important business.
Oh?
I shan't be more than half an hour.
Well, considering that we've been engaged since February the 14th, and I only met you today for the first time, it seems rather hard you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. Send his proposals into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
But isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing left in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. You can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack and some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray allow me to introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this would be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. Certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is called persistum. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, of course not, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years, resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, this is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you. But I feel bound to state, now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Oh, pray do. I think that when anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, provides us with many most painful examples of what I speak of. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn, but did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm afraid they've not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, there's no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little country newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
I think there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
You must be under some strange misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
That is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I shall never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It's obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills, quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were so many flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common in the country as people are in London.
Personally, I can't imagine how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I do believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it just to date. It's almost an epidemic amongst them, I'm told. May I offer you tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays. You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the sweetness of my nature and the extraordinary gentleness of my disposition, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make today.
Ernest! My own Ernest. A moment. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
Dear little Cecily, of course not. Whatever could have put such an idea into a little head?
Thank you, May.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
Oh, a moment, may I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn?
Yes, to good heavens, but
Of course not. Who could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you, you may.
I felt there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh,
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked, but my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet Ron.
My sister, will you not?
There is just one question I should like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I should like to be permitted to ask you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it pains me very much to have to speak the truth to you. Indeed, it's the first time in my entire life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position. I'm afraid I have very little experience doing anything of the kind. But I may tell you quite frankly, I have no brother Ernest. In fact, I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother. I don't ever intend to have a brother in the future.
No brother at all.
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It's not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call Bunburying, I suppose?
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is too. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has the right to Bunbury whenever one chooses. Very serious Bunburys knows that.
Serious Bunburys? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. What on earth you're serious about, I have the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You're such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to go down to the country quite so often as you used to, will you, dear Algie? Quite a good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off-cover, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite as frequently as your wicked custom was. Not a bad thing, either.
And another thing, on Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent young girl like that is perfectly inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be married to Gwendolyn, that is all. I love her.
I simply wanted to be engaged to Cicely. I adore her.
But I think there's no chance of that ever happening.
I don't see much likelihood of you and Miss Fairfax ever being united.
Well, that's no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers ever do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there just calmly eating muffins while we're in this terrible trouble, I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner, can I? The butter might get on my cups. One should only ever eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am in great trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. In fact, whenever I'm in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At present, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that's no reason at all why you should eat them in that greedy way.
I wish you would have some tea cake. I don't much like tea cake.
Oh, good heavens, I think a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
Yes, but you consider it's perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
Oh, I said it's perfectly heartless and you to eat muffins.
Yes, that may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algie, I wish to goodness you would go.
Oh, you can't possibly ask me to leave. I haven't had my dinner yet. I never go without my dinner. No one does except vegetarians, people like that. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened this afternoon at 6:15, under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that wretched nonsense, the better. Why, I made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself this afternoon at 5:30. Naturally, I will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both take the name of Earnest. It's absurd. Besides, I have every right to be christened if I want to. There's no evidence that I was ever christened at all in the first place. Indeed, Dr. Chasuble seems to think it highly likely that I never was. It's different in your case. You've been christened already.
Yes, but I've not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That's the important thing.
Quite so I know my constitution can stand it. I must say, if you are not sure about your ever having been christened, and think it dangerous you're venturing on it now, it might make you very unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, you said yourself that a severe chill is not hereditary.
It used to be, I know. I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
No, that's nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left, and I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake!
Then why on earth do you have it served up for your guests? What ideas of hospitality you have.
Algernon, I have already told you to go. Why don't you go? I don't want you here.
I have not quite finished my tea yet, and there's still 1 muffin left.
show they have some sense of shame left.
They've been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it is the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems to be a satisfactory answer, doesn't it?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what possible explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have the opportunity of coming up to town as often as possible in order to see me?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject. But I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Their explanations seem to me to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That appears to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True, I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An admirable idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time for me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
To please me, you ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I should consider it wrong. But of course you clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately, from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I'm engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury's dead.
When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Oh, Bunbury? He was quite exploded.
Exploded? exploding? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well paid for his morbidity.
What I mean, Aunt Augusta, was that Bunbury was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, that is what I mean. So Bunbury died.
Well, he seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physician. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon? Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that goes on seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think a few preliminary inquiries on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest, Gervase Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Thiefshire, in B.
That is not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have preserved the court records of the period. They're open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
Oh, how generous of you, Lady Bracknell. You will also be pleased to hear that I have in my possession certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles, both the German and English varieties.
Ah, a life crowded with incident, though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favour of premature experiences. The time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask whether Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So nice to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000, and in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. There are few girls of the present day who have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvellous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lancing, and after 3 months her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round here. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They are worn very high just at present. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care tuppence for social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Of course, dear, you clearly understand that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend on. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. but I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I shall have to give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also refer to me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I am not in favour of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Pardon me for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but as Miss Cardew's guardian, she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
On what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I might almost say, an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly with you, Lady Bracknell, but the fact is, I do not at all approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He is an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. Why, this afternoon, during my absence from London on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house on false pretenses of being my brother, and therein consumed, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of Pierre Jouet Roux 89, a wine I've been especially reserving for myself. He succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. What makes his behavior all the more heartless is he has known from the start that I don't have a brother, that I've never had a brother, and I don't ever intend to have a brother, not even of any kind.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
How extremely kind. My own decision, however, remains unaltered.
Come here, dear. How old are you?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right to make some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. Look so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age and freed from the restraints of tutelage. So I do not think your guardian's consent is a matter of any importance.
Excuse me, but I think it's only fair to mention, Lady Bracknell, that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have of their own free choice remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40. Many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algy, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anyone. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do require punctuality in others. Waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
And what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew has stated positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the decision rests entirely in your own hands. Why, the moment you consent to my marrying Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then I'm afraid a passionate celibacy is all any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we've already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir. Is not that somewhat premature?
Both of these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Then am I to understand that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
The way things stand right now, Dr. Charlesable, I don't see how the thing could be of any practical benefit to either of us.
I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views which I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the past hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I am on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. The matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect remotely connected to education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
She is our Miss Cardew's governess.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is not.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting for you there for the last hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Grosvenor Square, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, due to the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction which I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
Excuse me, Miss Prism, but would you happen to remember where you left this handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Please, Miss Prism, I must know. The matter is of grave importance to me. You must tell me where you left that handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room at once. Gwendolyn, you will wait here for me?
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing. Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
His noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They're always vulgar and often convincing.
Stop now.
I do wish he'd come to some conclusion. The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag in which you deposited the baby? Please consider your answer carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Here is the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It's been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than the handbag. I was the baby you placed in it. Yes, mother?
I am unmarried.
Oh, I do not deny that is a serious blow. But who has the right to cast a stone against one who has so suffered? May not repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Pardon me, Lady Bracknell, for seeming inquisitive, but... Could you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
His elder brother! I always knew I had a brother! I always said I had a brother! How could you ever have doubted that I had a brother? Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. My unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Oh, Algy, you old scoundrel, you've never treated me like a brother in all your life. You'll have to treat me with all respect now.
Not till today, old boy, I admit. I did my best, though I was out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Oh, I'd quite forgotten that fact. Your decision on the subject is irrevocable, I suppose?
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Pardon me, Lady Bracknell again, but at the time when I had been placed in the handbag, had I been christened?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
And what Christian name was I given?
Well, being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, and what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the General's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one. It's eccentric, I admit, but that was only in later life, and was the result of the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and other things of that kind.
Algy, you don't remember what our father's Christian name was, do you?
My dear boy, we weren't even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear on the military records of the period, I suppose.
The General was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life, so I have no doubt that his name would appear in any military directory.
I have the army lists of the last 40 years right here. Why, to think that these records should have been the object of my study for all these years. Oh, let's see here. In generals, let's see, we have Malin, Moxburn, Magley, ghastly names they have. Markley, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief, Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant, Colonel, Colonel, General, 1869, Christian names, Earnest, John. I always told you my name was Earnest. And it's Earnest after all. I mean, it's Earnest naturally.
Yes, I remember now that the General was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest! My own Ernest! I knew from the first you could have no other name.
Oh, my own one. It is a terrible thing for a man to suddenly find out that all his life he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
Darling.
Letitia.
Frederick!
Oh, Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
hilarious.
Horrible. Where is the mirror?
Yeah, where is the mirror? It was right. I just saw it. It's right there. Here, let me see.
Dana.
Oh, look, she's here.
Really? 6 o'clock.
Miss Perfect.
Oh!
I hope I'm not that.
You aren't. You're late.
I don't know, but I didn't open up.
It's up here.
A moment of relaxation. He can't relax.
How boring. That's great.
I'm on PAC TV.
Yeah.
Not yet. We might edit this part out.
Oh, that'd be good.
Next on the table because I felt small.
Why don't you film Jenny?
I really like your red tie.
Thank you. You know what? I heard you were throwing away a tie very similar to this.
Oh, no, not a red
A good
tie.
friend of mine salvaged it, and we were both just incredulous that you could have thrown away.
Hey,
such a
Christy, are
good
you
tie.
done with the little guy
That was the
yet?
tie that was in our trash can, wasn't
No,
it?
it isn't. No, it isn't.
Actually, it's
Jeff
fine.
Cavanaugh
Dana's
has
not ready
ties
for
in the
me.
trash can.
Oh, has he?
Yeah. David, stop.
I just want to know, how much of this can you take?
How much? I can take a lot.
All right, then I'll keep going.
But you're wasting battery and film, and I mean,
Definitely wasting film.
Eventually here, you're going to say something
Cameron's gonna
funny,
break here in a
and
second.
I'm going to catch it.
what am I gonna say? If I say it sooner, then
Yeah, then I'll turn off the camera.
okay. Something funny.
I'm very emotional.
See, of course, now I'm on the spot, and I can't.
Shall I ask Sabella for help?
I can't think of.
Tell your joke about small children.
I can talk about small children. There you go. You know, if you have anything that makes noise, cell phones, pagers, small children, please turn them off.
That was good. Not good enough. He's got a new
Wow, we have
eyebrow.
lots of black stuff over there.
This is why girls are such great artists. They
What?
grow up painting.
Yeah.
Painting?
No, it's called smearing, okay? Like,
And they do it all backwards in the mirror, so it hardly counts.
exactly.
Can't you, like...
Who are these people babbling on the radio? Let's look
That
at the
would be
radio.
Sabella.
Let's see.
It's only Sabella, really.
Say something to us, Sabella.
Push the button in.
Sabella, tell us you'll marry... No, tell him you'll marry him.
Sabella, will you marry me?
Say, do you know who this is?
That was yes.
Well, then all you do is you tell us a term and then you tell us
Make
about
sure you
the
get
term.
it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting it.
You know,
You just kind of have this propensity for having girls run their fingers through your hair.
it's the cells that can.
Go away, go away, go away, go away. Look, didn't you ever hear that hair artists are
just remember
temperamental
for
people and if you mess with them, they'll
Genome,
get
it
mad and
contains
do
the
things?
nuts.
Actually,
That's
no.
nonsense. You're temperamental even when you're not messing with hair.
Well,
That
that's a
it?
good point. However,
Here, I'll get a little better so you can look at it. Yeah, smoking.
Periodic.
Oh my goodness.
not smoking, that's steam.
There you go.
Molecule with protein. Are you zooming on the whole hairs?
Oh yeah, we're getting it all.
The curls. And curls of fame. Those contain.
In other words, it's the last match.
Christie's gentle yet professional touch.
Yes, the heat.
Summary?
Yeah. Because usually that's where you should get
This is really gross. I wanted y'all to see this again. If you get close enough, you can see the lice.
Is there not one like...
Oh. Do you see them crawling around in there? You have to use a little bit of focus and imagination, but they're there.
That's as close as you can get.
Alright, well, I quit grossing you out.
Dan, have you been given a layer of Aquanet? Do you have your Aquanet?
Probably not.
Why don't you come get your
Gel is
Aquanet?
down back by...
Oh, David's passing out Aquanet. This is interesting.
Now we're all going to get
You
high.
know, if we just had a little bit of spiked eggnog back here, like, it would be ideal.
Oh,
It really would.
I remember the first time I had spiked apple cider, I was 10 years old and I went to an open
he's
house
got
and I
experience.
saw that place.
You know, when I was like,
He does this to his hair every day.
coolest. We all would spray our hair like Zach on Saved by the Bell.
Still does. Look at that hair. Look at his hair. No, not the Reverend's hair. Look at David Cooper's hair. He still does it. Yeah, look at that hair.
All right.
Look at that. Look at that hairline. So much hair.
The only thing this stuff is good for, now that I can breathe again, is starting fires.
This is true. We're making a match, but we can't have open flame here in Red Hill.
And like suffocating insects and things.
Oh wow.
I'm not sure how it's been done.
You haven't seen the official theatrical way of doing a clerical collar, have you?
No, I guess not.
Duct tape is right here.
Exactly.
Just like that.
Kind of like.
Stick your dress to it, and then like nothing.
How many girls does it take to color a vicar?
Claire.
As many as possible.
I made a comment about my.
Nice.
Some vicious.
Cat fight.
This is why people really join Eden Troupe,
Yeah,
so they can be pampered.
You know what? To be perfectly honest, like.
It's not pampering.
Yes, it is. Leave my camera alone, Mr. Cooper. Unless you're going to take pictures with it.
Do you have a job? I'll take pictures with it.
Well, he'd come up with something else to do.
Picture of myself and Amy.
Oh.
I think I was stepping inside.
Now I'm gonna take a picture of myself and someone else.
I don't want pictures of you, David.
Good job, Amy.
Such vanity.
That is just alarming. Every single picture Mary has is going to have David Cooper in it.
Give me the camera.
Whoa.
David, give me the camera and stay there.
Great.
Justify.
Any other girls want to make comments on flirting for the record?
What is this?
Dana,
Snyder.
Mary Beth. Oh, Christy does.
I'd just like to point out that flirting may be a national pastime, but once you're married, it becomes a sort of addiction. So past a certain line, it becomes a problem.
Oh.
I'm confused.
So how do we flirt in a balanced manner?
Have your priorities straight, plenty of self-esteem, actualize yourself, reach a higher consciousness, know what you want, and do plenty of yoga.
All right. Thank you very much.
No, it is not.
Where's your?
Will you knock it off?
He's coming.
It's like Dr. Ferris's can of stop it! Stop it!
Finish me so I can have fun.
No, Jen!
Yeah, model. I've got hair. Is that your funny bit?
That was good. That was good. Can you do that again?
Put this down right here.
Do you get
Back
it?
slowly out of the room. I'm gonna wash my hands.
Did you shave, David?
Yeah, I shaved. You know, I'm like the 5th person to ask me that. Yes, I shaved. It's all taken care of.
David.
Did you iron your pants?
Shave brought to you by Danny Davis's electric radio.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Your mistake?
Makeup is fine. He's fine.
This
It's
one
his
is this what you're
hair.
looking at?
Don't touch it. Just don't touch it.
It
Give
can't
up.
get worse.
It really can't get worse.
Come here. Rubber things.
David Snyder.
I've always wanted to do that. Like for the last 3 nights.
I was saving myself for Casey.
It's no worse, I promise you. It's no worse.
It's no worse. Just do this front one,
Been
right?
violated.
Keep your hands on the camera or I'm going to send you away. I noticed. Snyder.
You're making David's stomach hurt. Stop making
I'll go
jokes.
to David, he'll put some Aquanet or whatever it is in it, and it'll be fine.
Aquanet will Aquanet will not help. Oh my goodness.
Notice the absence of the P on the end of the word help. May I help?
What happened? You can save it. No, you did.
Yo, chill. I'm not unchill. I'm quite full on actually.
I'm looking at
I'm being a girl.
Marianne.
I just think this hair is so
That
good.
stuff on the back is not
Can't
really
just
Dana's
wear
hair. So, let's see.
Your hair is just
In fact, most of it is not
Most of
really
it's not.
Yeah, that's not really Dana's
About
hair.
90% of it is not my hair.
Look, it's actually Dana's hair. Because Dana didn't really have headlights, did she?
I actually have not checked. But on the other hand,
There's that hair. Oh, I can't.
There comes a time when the hair